Good morning, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here, getting ready to film Outsiders and First Moondog, which will be in two parts again. Today's the 7th of December 2014. 73 years ago, the Japanese committed the most geotemporally disconnected act of aggression the planet has ever seen. I wonder if it will rate a mention in today's program.
Well, it's the moment you've all been waiting for, a thing often denied but inevitable. An announcement that was always on the cards, and it's natural enough that we should read it first in the pages of the Sunday Telegraph.
Call me an overpainted, perfumed, Botox dinosaur, and I am guilty as charged. But I believe that most women look better with a little makeup and some attention to grooming. Ros Raines writes.
And while that's a story that should obviously be top of mind for all thinking Australians this morning, there are other issues afoot. Less surprising, granted, is news of a
baby pay backflip.
Or as the Sunday Herald Sun puts it, just a little more intriguingly,
baby backflip.
Either way, tumbling toddlers or cash grab, it's a big political story, shared, as is the Sunday custom, through that official agent of government information flow, News Corporation's National Affairs Editor. And yes, the Prime Minister has trimmed the sails of his signature policy, the Paid Parental Leave Scheme. As the Sunday Telly reports,
high-earning working mothers will be deprived of maternity pay to foot the bill for cheaper childcare under a backdown on Prime Minister Tony Abbott's promised paid parental leave scheme.
Or, as the same reporter puts it in the Sunday Herald Sun,
wealthy mums will be banned from big payouts under Tony Abbott's paid parental leave scheme, with the savings ploughed into more affordable childcare.
And there's more than policy gymnastics in the papers this morning. There's also polling and grim news for various governments, as Brisbane's Sunday Mail notes.
55-45, Abbott and Newman in fight for their political lives.
For yes, this morning's Galaxy polling continues a grim trend for the federal government, and for Queensland Premier Campbell Newman, facing defeat in his own seat, it seems, on the figures. All of which is glad tidings for the opposition, winning while standing still, the Stephen Bradburys of Australian politics. As Annabelle Crabb writes this morning for Fairfax,
who's the happiest bloke in Canberra right now? Bill Shorten, who spends his days enjoying exactly what Tony Abbott enjoyed while in opposition. The guilty thrill of unearned political advantage, as fluky as a 50 on the footpath.
Online this morning, Uber blogger Andrew Bolt has read the same polling.
The Galaxy poll confirms the Abbott government is in near fatal trouble.
But steady on, everybody. Thank heavens we have Piers Ackerman to breathe a little common sense into the somewhat febrile state of federal politics.
Before the silly season gets any sillier, it should be noted Joe Hockey is not about to be shifted from Treasury. There won't be a cabinet reshuffle early in the new year, and the record shows the Abbott government finished the year well ahead of its deluded opponents.
So there.
Time now for Outsiders. I'm Barry Cassidy, and you're not. And seeing Barry Cassidy on the telly gives us some sort of an out-of-body experience. Outsiders this morning are Maxine McHugh, Fellow at University of Melbourne Graduate School of Education, author of Class Act, published in September. It focuses on transformation in schools. Ben Riley is with you too, current president of the Young Liberals Australia, vice president of the International Young Democrat Union, and Bob Ellis, author, former speechwriter, blogger, current book, The Ellis Laws, through Penguin. Welcome to you all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Interesting news today politically. Ben, I wonder your thoughts on this just to begin. We have polling which shows a fairly ordinary position for the government, 55-45, two-party preferred, and talk of a rearrangement of the PM's signature policy, paid parental leave. Is there a connection between the two things?
I'm sure there is. They wouldn't change it for no reason. But look, with the polls though, just we're the best part of 2 years away from the next election, and to view it in context, I think it was even leading into the polls in 1998. Howard was behind 43-57. So, and he went on to win that, obviously. So I don't think it's the end of the world for the government, but look, they'd rather it be the other way around.
He won it by 48 to 52. He was 400,000 votes behind Beazley.
Yes, he never quite got over the line in pure numbers, is true.
It's the seats that
And
matter.
got no mandate for the GST as a result.
And yet, Maxine, there is a sense of panic. Interesting yesterday to look at the Weekend Australian as an example of sort of conservative commentary in the country. And piece after piece after piece looked at the government's performance, looked at what it sees to be central issues of communication, of blockage in the Prime Minister's office. It's a real tone of high anxiety.
Yeah, well, I have to say, every morning when I pick up the Australian, it's a bit of a head-spinning operation. I mean, it started a couple of weeks back with people like Janet Albrighton and others starting to put the boot in. I thought, oh, this is interesting. Some of Abbott's cheerleaders are on the turn. Then I look at this weekend's newspapers and I see I've got Dennis Shanahan in front of me. This is what Shanahan has said in the Australian. Tony Abbott's transition from opposition leader to Prime Minister has failed. Now, that's a simple sentence. There are no qualifications in that sentence. Then we go to Peter Van Onselen, not always the full-throated cheerleader for the government, but Peter Van Onselen says, we are in the diabolical position of having a short-term Prime Minister who is already a virtual dead man walking. Right, this is the Australian. Now, this is a pretty quick withdrawal of support from, if you like, the Abbott cheerleaders. It's happened within a year.
Yes.
As we know, the first budget is still out there hanging. There's been a loss of confidence, I would say, across a lot of the traditional constituencies that normally support the coalition. We've now got to the end of the year and there is already chatter, and I can tell you there's certainly been plenty of chatter in certain circles in Melbourne this weekend about two things. The fallout of what happened last weekend with Daniel Andrews' quite decisive win, not just over the line, very decisive win against a one-term government, and now just how much longer Tony Abbott has. Now, I have to say to you, I was saying to some of my friends in New South Wales 6 months ago who were chattering about this, come on, this is a fantasy. Well, it's no longer a fantasy. Liberals are talking about it.
I mean, this is the thing, isn't it, Ben? I mean, you say 2 years to the poll, and yes, absolutely, and time enough in that period to turn things around, but surely the view must be forming in some areas of conservative Australia that the team in charge right now might not be the team best placed to turn that around.
Look, I think it's going to be darkest before the dawn, perhaps, is the way to put it. But look, they're making the changes they said they were going to do. And look at the fundamentals. Abbott came to the election saying, we're going to stop the boats, we're going to axe the carbon tax, get rid of the mining tax, turn the budget around. And, tick, 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 and work in progress. The colour movement will happen. And remember, we're in the killing season just before Christmas. This is when people usually get rolled, and it's muck-up week in politics. So people are going to come out with these sorts of things because the timing's right if you're going to make a change. So you get out there and call for it now, because that's when it's likely to happen. But I really just don't see there being any major change. If there was one lesson from the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd years, was that people don't like seeing change. And all the initial knifing of Rudd, all that did was confirm in voters' minds who were unsure that there was a problem. So I really don't think the government will make any major changes.
Can this be turned around, Bob?
Shorten is now 1 million votes more favoured as preferred Prime Minister than Abbott. The government is 1.3 million votes behind the opposition. It's quite possible they could get back 100,000 of those votes. But not really. You're looking, and Morrison amazingly has at last provided the people smugglers with a model they can sell. So you get on the boat, you get a job in a country town in Queensland where you're not liked and needed. They'll be queuing in their thousands as I speak.
The interesting thing, Maxine, and this is Outsiders on Radio National, Sunday Extra. We're talking with Maxine McHugh, Bob Ellis, and Ben Riley. Maxine, the commentary that you were looking at before from the weekend papers, its tone is basically of constructive criticism. I wonder what a difference it makes, and Ben took us back to the Rudd years there, where the tone of the commentary was somewhat more aggressive. Is that a sort of a determining factor here? Is that what's staving us, or keeping this government from a sense of complete crisis, that the commentary is still trying to help?
Well, look, I agree. There's not the element of viciousness, if you like, and hand-to-hand combat that we saw a couple of years ago. But I mean, I think it's the tone here is one of, you've got to be joking. We're a year into a new government. A government that came in promising, no surprises, clear, competent rule, right? And what we've had is what Australians hate, which is, chaotic, surprise package a week, and as a result, trust has collapsed. I looked at Abbott this week. I have to say, I'm less taken with the commentary, as a general rule these days. But I looked at Abbott this week. He gave the press conference on Monday, a very, very long press, but then he had an interview with Lee Sales there on 7:30. There were two huge opportunities towards the end of the year, after a bad year, as I say, the budget not having been sold, and still in a state of extreme uncertainty, bad polls, loss of Victoria. This was the opportunity for Abbott to sort of reset and to get out there and sort of say, okay, bad year, make a few concessions, but this is what I am about. This is the direction for my government. These are my priorities for 2015. What I saw in both the press conference and particularly in the interview with Lee Sales was an incredibly defensive Abbott. In fact, he was so defensive, he was anticipating problems that actually Lee didn't even bring up. I mean, it was interesting, at one point he brought up the issue of the ABC, and Lee said, I didn't even particularly have that in mind, but clearly in his head is this clutter of problems, and you can almost feel him struggling kind of through the thinking of it to get a clear line out there. And he's not doing it.
It's not just the ABC that's getting on his case.
But my message to the public is that we are delivering. The carbon tax repealed, the mining tax repealed, the boat stopping, the roads building, and the budget under repair for the first time in 7 years.
With respect, you were fairly feral in opposition, weren't you? I mean the greatest respect by that. And isn't he just doing what you did? And why would he do anything different when it worked for you?
Karl Stefanovic, they've been giving the PM a bit of a hard time in an interview which got a fair bit of play. Isn't there a thing here where the PM wanted to reset, and there's talk about the areas in which the government has underachieved this year. The government doesn't tend to take that to heart. The reset is all language. The reset is all promise. The PM promised changes, yet he does little more than promise, and that situation gets more and more difficult, does it not, Ben, into the new year?
Well, I think we've seen the reset this morning with the changes to the PPL scheme, and it wouldn't surprise me if you see more in the coming weeks. I think they've realised what, if some things aren't going through. Even you look at Pine, he didn't get the higher education bill through, but he's flagged that he'll be changing and coming back with an amended package in the new year.
Yeah, the rhetoric is what a great year it's been.
Well, I don't think they necessarily said it was 100%. They've got a bunch of things done, but there's still clearly more to go. But that's the nature of having an uncertain Senate. The same in the previous government, less so the Senate, but the lower house. It's gritty politics.
And Bob, you're agitated.
No Prime Minister who's lost respect has ever regained it. Billy McMahon didn't, George W. Bush won't, Tony Blair won't, John Howard would never win back his seat. It's a mortal commodity, it fades to black. Tony Abbott is now the least trusted national leader since Ceausescu. He won't come back from that. He can't.
Okay, here endeth part 1